in this video. We're going to paint a flamingo together. We're going to paint this in watercolors, so grab those paints and paint along with me if you can, because that's the best way to learn how to do this. What I suggest is watching this all the way through to start with, and then grabbing your paints and watching this again, but following along with me at your own pace. Part of this tutorial I'm going to speed up just for entertainment value for YouTube, but you will find the full length tutorial on Patreon. I'm going to be painting this in real time on Patreon, so you can follow along with me at your own pace. You'll also find a line drawing that you can print off and trace over, so you don't have to worry about the drawing stage. And I do provide a reference photo as well, so that helps you to paint along with me as well. And for a small amount each month, you can help to support the running of my channel. If you've not been here before, hi, my name's Lindsay. I'm a self-taught watercolour artist living in the UK. I'm also a mum to 4 children and a little dog. I don't know if you can see her on my sofa. And on this channel, I provide step-by-step tutorials to help you learn watercolour the way that I did. Let's get stuck straight into this tutorial, and I hope you have fun watching. I found this photo on Pixabay, and excuse the background, because it's on a black background, it's actually reflecting all my art supplies in the background. So I had to move my face out of the way because you could see up my nose. Size 10 silver black velvet, size 6 silver black velvet, size 2, and this is a Voyage round, and it's a little size 2 pointed round brush. I'm using a ceramic plate that I got from Tesco. It's really inexpensive. If you're interested in purchasing a really good palette, I would definitely recommend this one. This one's my most used palette. I'm going to start off with a nice watery mix of this pyrrole orange. And the reason for this is I'm going to use this over parts of the bird, especially on the neck to start with. And I'm going to have this more of a orange colour, but very light, so adding lots of water to it. This pyrrole orange is very punchy and in your face and very bold, so I don't want this to be really pigmented to start off with. But what I am going to do is add the tiniest amount of this permanent rose, because I want it slightly pink. So I'm just adding a tiny bit to start with. So this is the light colour that I've just mixed up. So I'm going to take a nice diluted mix of it here, and we're going to start off with this. So I've basically just had whatever's in my paintbrush, added my paintbrush into my water jar, and then just used that. So now that is a really light wash. Can you see how much lighter that is just by adding a bit of water to it? So we're going to have our lightest wash, then we're going to have the second wash, which is going to be the mid-tones. And then what I'm going to do is add the pyrrole orange quite thick and the permanent rose together quite thick, to get this lovely thick mixture that we can use for the darkest areas, or the most vibrant areas anyway. I want this to be more of a pink than an orange for the darkest colour, so I am adding a bit more of the permanent rose to this. Well, I'm going to start sketching the flamingo out now, and I'm going to use my Faber-Castell Aqua pencil. So this is a graphite aquarelle. It's a HB and it's a really lovely pencil. I'm going to start with the body, because the body is the biggest area, and I want to work out where to put everything so everything fits on the paper. So there's no technical way that I do this, I just sort of eyeball it. So I'm just going to start with the back. So the back kind of comes up like this, and I'm just looking at the angles of the body first, and also the length. So I'm looking at the length of his body, and his tail feathers come down like this. So I'm just doing some rough shapes to start with. I'm not paying particular attention to where these feathers, like the particular shape of these feathers and things like that. So I'm just having a look at the rough outline of the feathers first, and then we'll define them a bit later on once we've got the general shape in. So I'm looking at the outside shape, and then so I would say, right, that needs to come up a little bit more like that, and there's maybe his wing, maybe his body his wing comes in a bit more like that actually. And drains up there. Let me just rub that out. So I'm starting off on an A4 sheet of paper. So this is just normal printer paper that I use, and the reason why I'd rather draw on this first rather than straight onto my watercolour paper is because I make lots of mistakes and I use my eraser quite a lot, and I don't want to ruin the surface of the paper because I use Arches paper. It's quite expensive, so yeah, I don't want to add grooves with my pencil either into the watercolour paper. So I'm just, I think I've come up a bit too far there. Yeah, I did, just a tiny bit. Just looking at the shape of that. So here's the neck area. Now what I want to do is just get this little turny bit, or this little groovy bit of his neck in first. This is top of his head. And then I'll get in his neck there, so I can sort of join that up. It's not too hard really to draw a flamingo. They are quite simple to draw, I would say. I find it much simpler to draw than any other bird really. Birds I find are quite easy to draw anyway. You just need to look at the general outline of the bird rather than thinking of all these nooks and crannies and bumps and lumps and everything. Just look at the outline of the bird. What I've done is I need to bring his head in a bit more, so I'll go from this shape here, and then what I'll do is I'll just bring that down there like that. That's better, and I can add his beak then. The legs in now. Yeah, so the flamingo's leg is not completely straight, so just concentrate on the shape of the leg. It's separated. We'll just separate that like that. That's pretty much it. So what I'm going to do now is flip it over. I'm going to take a softer pencil. So I'm just going to take my 2B pencil. I'm going to scribble over the back of this. Make sure that you put something underneath, because sometimes when you scribble over the back you do get the outline of your graphite pencil on your surface, and I've done that so many times. So what I'm going to do is just using the side of my pencil like this, I'm just going to scribble over the back. I'm not covering the whole of the paper, as you can see. I'm only covering where the drawing is, and I can see the drawing through my paper. Taking my mechanical pencil now, and this is a rupturing ticky, I'm just going to transfer the design. So all you need to do is just draw over your pencil mark. If we think of the light as hitting from this area here, so the top of the head, we're going to have the lightest areas on the top of the head, at the neck area here, because the light might be hitting, or his head is like sort of to the side, so the light is hitting behind his head and then onto his neck as well. And we'll also have a little bit on his neck here, and maybe a bit at the top of his back as well. So those are going to be the lightest areas. The lightest areas in tone, so his lightest feathers, are going to be this area here on the back, and also a little bit on his tummy area as well. So those are going to be the lightest areas. Grab your lightest colour with lots of water. So this is the lightest colour that we had this sort of peachy, pinky colour here. I'm going to start off by painting his feathers at the bottom. You could paint it in any order that you want, but the reason why I'm doing this is because I'm right-handed, and if I paint this bottom area first, then I don't run the risk of actually putting my hand in my paint. So if I started from the head, I need to rest my hand on my paper, and then I'm painting his body, and I'm going to just end up putting my hand in my paint. So this is just my preference, but like I said, you just paint in whatever order you want. So we're just going to cover the whole of his body. If you're wondering what brush I'm using, this is a size 10 silver black velvet brush. I love this brush because it's a really good pointed round brush, so it's got a lovely shape to it. Although it's a big brush, I can get into really tiny details like this. Can you see how it's really comes to a really fine point? So I end up just using one brush really for most of my painting. So I'm just painting his head in this colour here, and then what I'm going to do is just dab my brush on a paper towel so I've not got too much water in my brush. I'm going to pick up that mid-tone colour, and I'm just going to add that onto the back of his neck, so while that paper is still wet. I love Arches. It is the most beautiful paint, it is the most beautiful paper for blending colours. It just blends so beautifully, much better than any paper that I've ever used, and I've used loads of different ones. But yeah, I'm just going to use a little bit of that. Is it dry? That's dry, so I'm not going to go there at all. I'm just going to use some little flicks with my brush. Now these are going to blend up because they are wet, and that's the effect that I'm going for. We're going to work wet on dry in a minute anyway. I'm going to take that third consistency, which is that thicker, it's got some water mixed into it, but that thicker paint, and I'm just going to add that around the back of his head here, so his little cheek area, and also around the back of his neck where I find it's the most vibrant. So we've got that lovely vibrant pinky orange colour. Little streaks here because I want that blend of wet on wet and also dry on wet. I'm just adding a bit of that darker colour on there just while the paper is still wet, just a few little dots really. You'll get a lovely blend of colours then, see. And because I know that watercolour dries lighter, I'm going to add a nice thick mix of that orangey pink just around the back of his head there and on his cheek area, and also a little bit on the back of his neck just so it stands out more. I don't know if you can hear, but at the moment it is absolutely tipping down, so we've got really bad weather at the moment in the UK, and we're actually heading for a thunderstorm today, so in a minute, I could go and get my girls from school and walk outside in that. We're going to allow the body to dry completely now because I don't want to risk going into this area which is drying. I'm going to work on the legs. I'm going to use this beautiful granulating pink now. I'll show you what it looks like on its own. We are going to add a bit of grey to this too, so it's not so pink, but can you see how it's a beautiful pink colour? I'm going to use it really watered down, so we're going to have a lovely light pinkish, it's like a pinkish purplish grey, isn't it? What I like to do is just pick up a watery mix, and then I'll take my water jar, I'll dip my paintbrush in my water jar once and then sort of swipe it on the side of the jar so it becomes more diluted again, so it got a lovely light colour then. I'm going to use this for painting in the legs. I'm also going to add a tiny bit of the coral to the legs, just in a few areas, so we got that sort of, just a mid-range, like a range of colours. So I'm going to add a little bit just to the back of his legs here, just so that there's like different colours in certain areas. It sort of makes it look a bit more interesting that way. A little bit on the back of his legs. I'm not going to go too wild with the legs because I don't want them to be the focus, and because we're using a granulating colour, that's going to naturally granulate and add a bit of texture. What I am going to do is just add a little bit of Payne's Grey, like a little watered down version of the Payne's Grey with my small brush, and I'm just going to use that at the top of his legs just so we get a bit of a shadow going on, and also down the back of his leg a little bit. I'm going to add a tiny bit of that grey to the back of his leg just so we make it look a bit more sort of rounded. There's a bit of hair on my brush. Yeah, I'm just going to run it down the back of his leg so we get a bit of a shadow going on. Maybe down the back of this leg area as well. Like I said, I don't want this area to stand out too much, so I'm not going to add too much detail. So I'm going to do the same on the next leg now. A little bit to the front of his knee, and then a bit here and there really. And then taking my thin brush, so this is my tiny little brush, I'm going to take that grey, so it's lovely and watered down, because I don't want it to be too dark. I just want to add a little bit to the top of his leg, and also a bit to the back of his leg as well, so we just get a bit of a shadow. Although there's not a shadow in the reference photo, I just wanted to add that there because it just makes it look more natural, a bit, like I said, a bit more rounded when you're working on a flat area. I'm going to take a super diluted version of this pink, so I'm adding a little bit of that water onto the side of that lightest colour, and the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to just paint the tops of the legs, and I wasn't sure what colour to paint them because they are super light in the reference photo. They look almost white, but they're not, but I do want to add a bit of colour to that. I don't want to leave it white really. This is just a nice light, and then I will just get a little bit of the orange, or the orangey peachy colour, and I'm just going to add that to the tops there, just so we add a bit of a different dimension to them. Maybe a little bit at the back of this one. I'm going to re-wet the birds now, so I've just got my size 10 brush again, and I've got some clean water on my brush, and I'm just going to start with these bottom feathers. I'm going to leave the head alone for now because I want to work on the feathers first, because there's no point in wetting the head, because we're going to work on the body, and by the time we've worked on the body, that head area is just going to be dry. So I'm going to just add the water to the body area, and we're going to do a little bit at the neck, and that's only because I don't want to get a harsh line by here. So if we wet this area, it's going to make sure that the paint doesn't stop there and create a harsh edge. If you see any areas where you can see that water really forming and causing a little puddle, you need to smooth it out a bit. So just painting that water on carefully, making sure that I add sometimes 2 layers of water, because this is Arches paper. The water sometimes sinks straight into the paper and dries quite quickly, so I do sometimes like to add 2 layers. Then I'm going to take my size 6 brush, and I'm going to take that mid-strength colour that we use. So this is the lightest colour, the mid-strength colour, which has got a bit more of the paint mixed into it. And then we've got that nice dark colour there, so that's a very dark colour. And I've added a bit of water to this one here at the top, so it's still nice and dark where it's dried on the paper and on the dish. And I'm taking out a little bit of water from my brush, and I'm just going to add some little feathers. So I'm just pressing my brush onto the paper. I'm sort of adding light pressure, pressing down with my brush, and then lifting off. So it creates a bit of a tapered feather. Making sure that there's not too much water in my brush. I'm just going to add a little bit of pressure and then lift off. You can see there's a little bit of like a little bloom at the bottom where I lift off my brush. I'm just going to use the tip of my brush as well. If this happens to you where it sort of blooms out, it's because you've got too much water in your brush. So the best thing to do is just dab the end of your brush onto a paper towel, and that will take off some of the moisture, and make sure there's not too much water in your brush. And I'm just going to add a few of these sort of little feathery marks. And then what I am going to do is take the nice thick mixture. So this is a thick mixture, and I'm going to start adding some really vibrant feathers. So I'm just going to use the tip of my brush and add just a few little marks really with my brush. And I'm going to rinse off my brush, dab it on a cloth so it's a bit damp, and I'm just going to use that to blend out this colour here. And I think I'm going to add just a tiny bit here and there just to this area, but like I said, I'm not going too wild. What you can do is actually use your brush and flick off a bit of paint onto your paper like that, so it looks like there's a feather coming off. What I am going to do is take the Payne's grey, so I'm taking it a bit thicker now, so it's not completely, it is watered down, but it's not as watered down as we used it on the top of the legs. I'm just going to add a bit of a shadow here. If you have a look, that wing looks like it's on top, so I'm just adding a bit of a shadow there really. And then if you find that your paint has dried, you can take a damp brush and blend out the edge. I'm going to wet up the neck. Now again, I'm going to take that nice thick mix, so I'm going to actually add a bit more of that colour into that mix so it's lovely and vibrant, and then I'm going to add that to the back of his neck because I wanted this area to be the most vibrant. When watercolour dries, it does sink into the paper and then it becomes a bit more dull, so you can work in layers and make areas stand out. I always find that it's a bit better just to watch it dry and see how it turns out, and then you can actually add more layers. I'm going to start off by painting this little triangle area, so there's kind of like a triangle shape. I've got the Payne's grey now, and I'm going to have a light version of this Payne's grey because I want a light version of the grey on the beak. If you have a look at a flamingo's beak, it does look black, but if you have a look a little bit closer, it's actually quite a light grey. Don't worry if some of that blends up into the pink area, and if you don't want that to happen, then just allow that pink area to dry first, or just avoid touching it. So I'm just going to apply that there. I've got Winsor Lemon on my brush now, and I'm just going to paint in the eye area. Painting a nice concentrated yellow around the outside. So this has got more paint in it and less water. And then I'm just going to dip my brush in my jar, so I've got a really nice diluted version of that, and just paint the inside. While the face area dries, I'm going to take a really light version of this peachy colour that we mixed up with the Permanent Rose and the Pyrrole Orange. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this to the back tail feathers because I feel like they need to be a slightly bit darker than this area on top, where this is the lightest area here. So I'm just going to take a nice diluted wash of that, and I'm just going to paint in those back feathers. There's a little hair on my brush then. I'm just going to do some negative painting around this back feather here. So just creating some negative painting so it looks like those feathers are on top, the lightest feathers are on top. It's going to give more contrast now between those lighter feathers on top and this underneath feather, because I felt like they were sort of blending into one. I'm also going to add some of that colour on the tummy area because underneath the tummy is going to be a bit darker than those top feathers as well. And because I don't want a sudden stop there where it's quite a harsh line. I'm just going to take a damp brush and just blend that edge and also this edge here. I'm going to take a bit of the light grey as well and add a shadow here just so there's a separation. I'm just taking a damp brush and blending it out. And the last thing I'm going to do is just add that middle separation down the beak. So I've got a really nice concentrated version of the Payne's Grey and I'm using my tiny size 2 brush, and all I'm going to do is just paint that middle line, pressing down a little bit in the middle so it's a bit of a thicker line. And sometimes with thinner brushes like this they run out of paint really easily, so I just picked up a bit more paint. They can become a bit dry as well, so I don't really particularly work with thin brushes much. Just bringing it up a little bit more, and then the last little touch, tiny little pupil. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please let me know in the comments how you found this tutorial and how you found painting this flamingo. Were there any parts of the flamingo that you found quite difficult, or were there any parts that you needed to work on a bit more? If you've got any questions, please reach out to me. That's what I'm here for. I love to support you in your watercolour journey. The last thing I'm going to do actually is just a little bonus, and that is to take the really thick, so you don't have to do this, but I thought I'd add a little bit of extra bonus material on top. And I'm just going to take that extra thick paint and using a little size 6 brush, I'm going to work wet on to dry, and I'm just going to add a few little very vibrant feathers. So I'm just going to add that colour in, just pressing down with my brush. So I'm just sort of using that technique where you just use the tip of your brush, apply some pressure, and then lift it off at the end so you got like a tapered end, and it just creates the most perfect little feather marks. I'm going to add another one here. Just a few little hints of this darker colour really, just to add a bit of contrast. And well, like I said, you don't have to do this part because I was a little bit worried about doing this myself, thinking, oh, would I ruin it? But actually, it just adds a little punchy pop of colour, and it really brings the flamingo's feathers out on his back, I think. I'm also going to add a little one there as well. So yeah, let's leave it there before I fuss too much. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope to see you in my next video. Happy painting, and I'll see you soon. Bye. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you had fun watching this, and please give this a go yourself. Grab those paints. Honestly, it's not as hard as it looks. Once you get those paints out, even if you're a beginner, you will learn something. Even if you make a huge mess of this, you can just keep trying, because this is how I learned to start with. I watched YouTubers like myself on tutorials like this, and I used to get very frustrated because I couldn't make my painting look exactly like theirs. But now, 3 years on, I'm so much happier and so much more confident with painting because I never gave up. Have a lovely rest of your day. Happy painting. I'll see you soon. Bye.